Right, so Paralydium. I've been looking forward to the release of this album for not exactly the entire runtime. Some people who heard of this band when they first came out have been waiting for probably going on 4 years or so. I've only been waiting for just under a year probably. But I have been really excited about this, because even then, when I heard about this band, there was no discussion of there even being an album or when it was even coming, so I was really hoping that something would eventually come out. And well, yesterday was the day it came out. I had the day before that coming out because it leaked, and I gave it a listen then. I listened to it a fair bit yesterday, and I'm giving it a few listens today also. And I pretty much know every song inside and out. It's not really that complicated, the songs. And they have also released singles, and I have listened to the singles as well. So for those of you who don't know, this band is from the Holy Land of Metal, which is Sweden. I believe they're from Sweden. I'm pretty damn sure they're from Sweden. And the only release they've done so far was an EP, which was under the name The Paralydium Project. So this is what I heard and why I got into them and why I got so excited. The EP consisted of 3 songs, it was progressive metal, and the length was like 23 odd minutes, so like each track was like 8-7 minutes, some good length tracks. It had amazing melody, the keys were fantastic, they were so graceful and beautiful. The guitar leads were always there in the intros, and then the lead solos between guitar and keys, and they had a great groove to them, they had a great melody to it. The vocalist was absolutely fantastic, and I think I reviewed that thing something like a 9.5 out of 10. It was pretty much out the gates perfection, and I thought when these guys do an album, there's no question about it, it's gonna be absolutely jaw-dropping fantastic. The band can't do any wrong. So this is what I said, and I really stood by that. So was I wrong? So 4 years or 5 years later, because I think that EP came out 2015 or 2016, they have had this idea for Worlds Beyond. And then they were in the studio for a few years, I believe. They wrote it, they recorded it, they took their time with it. So this has really been thought about. It's not really been a rushed album. They've had time with this. And then they didn't have a record label for the EP, but then they got the record label, which is why this was able to happen eventually and finally. They signed with Frontier's record, or New Line Frontier or something. I don't like the label. And the album came out. They released, I believe it was 3 singles, which was Finding the Paragon, Crystal of Infinity, and Within the Sphere. There's 9 tracks on this album. The album consists of 45 minutes. And as I said, it is progressive metal. So for all this time and me saying it's 9.5 the EP, and they can't do any wrong when it comes to this album, they've had something like 4 or 5 odd years working on this. What do I think? Well, the singles weren't really that impressive compared to what the EP showed. But again, these are their songs like stripped out of the album and then listened to by themselves. This album is actually a concept album. I haven't really followed the story. I think it's cringy from the things I've heard, because it's about finding this crystal, and the crystal has power, and then all hail crystal, and you know, it's cringy and silly little things. It's not anything really deep or thought-provoking. It's about finding a crystal which has powers to heal the mighty lands and things. It's pretty rubbish. It's typical things you would find in like power metal, where the lyrics are just really stupid and childish. So I don't care. Concept album I usually like, but the concept of this I think is just beyond ridiculous. I'm not even going to put my effort into it. As I said, singles I wasn't too keen on, but again, they were isolated and it wasn't in the flowing overall construction of the album. So as I said, it could be better. coming off of a song and into another song, it could then fit, and then kind of I would appreciate it a lot more than it just being stood by itself. But 45 minutes for an album they've been spending so much time on, all this time to make music, and it's only 45 minutes. Again, the 45 minutes could be them really honing it in and just making everything absolutely perfect. Something really short but sweet. 2 of these tracks are actually interludes, so they're not actually tracks. Meaning you go from 9 tracks down to 7. There's only 7 tracks. And then we got 3 singles that we've now heard, so when the album dropped, how many songs are you left with? 4. It's the size of their EP, plus 1 song. You go out and you get your album, and you listen to it, and you're only getting 4 new songs. You've heard everything else. And again, the album's quite short. You take them 2 interludes out of things that aren't actually songs, and then you take that time length off the 45 minutes, you're looking around 40 to 41 minutes of a progressive metal album that has had 4 years in the making. That's a little atrocious to me, but again, it depends on how good the music is. So let's delve in and pick apart this thing track by track. So the first track is an introductory track. A lot of bands do them these days. I bloody wish they didn't, because it's just an absolute waste of time usually. So what does this track do? Is it just digital effects and just mindless nothingness, and then it's a track within itself and it has nothing to do with the following track? Therefore, why bother? Well, it's a bit of a weird one. So first off, it is not just mindless music, it is actually its own thing. It is the band. You get the musicians, you got some fascinating riffs, and it's like, okay, so this is the band. This is seeing the band actually do something for themselves and building something up and building into the next track within the sphere. So it's like, I don't mind this, as long as it is the band and it's building into the first track to build the anticipation and just show how the band do things themselves to get into the track. The problem is, it builds into the track within the sphere, but there's a pause, which is very odd. Enter the Paralydium. As the track ends, it ends with the like noise effect just increasing, and then it goes into within the sphere with the same sound, and then the band come in and then play off into the first track. So they're both connected, but then there's like 2 seconds of a gap. Like, it is actually its own little thing, and within the sphere isn't even connected. But then the sounds come together, so why is there this odd spacing? I thought maybe it was the device I was listening to, because sometimes depending on what you've listened to, it does put these random gaps in. But I've listened to it on my phone, I've listened to it off Spotify. It's always a gap. I don't know if this is a really huge, humongous mistake in the mixing and editing, because it seems that these tracks were supposed to be connected, and if they were, Enter the Paralydium would really be an actual track, but because they're this break, it's just jarring and it doesn't really connect anymore within the sphere because of what they've done. So Enter the Paralydium could have been your own little thing depending on your personal preference if you wanted that build-up of anticipation and see what the band do in that track, but because it's a disconnect and it's not really got anything to do with within the sphere anymore, because there is that pause, you may as well take that track out. So that is a shame, because you could have actually had that as a track and go, okay, so now I am getting just like 2 more minutes there and another track, but now no, so that's a shame. Going to Within the Sphere, this is a pretty kind of heavy song. You've got your keys, you've got the guitars. The guitars are basically just doing typical riffs, the keys are quite typical, your verse. The vocalist is a little kind of dry, he's not going with a lot of power until it gets to like the pre-chorus and chorus, where his voice actually opens up and his fluidity kind of really comes out, and it sounds really, really, really nice. So the verse, it's just kind of going for heavy, which is what the vocalist does, so it kind of sounds quite dry. There's no musicality to it, so his voice isn't open and clear and clean, and same with the guitars, they're not doing anything open or musical with melody like these chords or slides or something, you know, like a lead interlude through the verse just to give it this lift. There's none of that, it's basically just chords or something. And same with the keys, there's no fluidity about it or grace, it is basically just there because there is a keyboard player, therefore he has to do something, so he just fills in the time space. With the EP, that's not really what the band really did and what Paralydium was really great and unique for. As I kind of touched on, what made the Paralydium project so great is because they had groove and melody. There's so much groove to it instead of it just being typical metal. It has this really groovy sound to it and pop, and it has great melody to it. The voice has such a fluidity and grace about it, and then the guitars, as I say, has a lot of showmanship but not shred. He is always doing these cool riffs and then he's jumping into all sorts of leads. The first track on the EP, like, he jumps between lead, riff, lead, riff, lead, riff at least 4 times until the song actually starts, and that's quite consistent through each track of that EP. Same with the keys, it has a forefront, it's its own unique thing to give melody and this like otherworldly kind of sound to it. It's got sci-fi to it and it's just mystical, it's like so intriguing, the soundscape they have. And then as it gets into the riff, you've got this nice groove to it. This is just dry, it's quite typical. The intro starts and then it's just the typical like chunky sounding gent riffs, just hitting out the chords, gets into the verse and very dry vocals. The chorus opens up a little bit more and you get a little bits of that unique Paralydium, but it's still quite constrained. The only really good part about this track is basically the solo. The solo is huge, like you jump between keys to guitar to keys to guitar and it's really long and it's not just shred, it's all sorts of things. There's technical stuff to it, there's melody, and the sound, the tone is really, really pleasant, and as I say, you get a lot of time from it, so the solo is really, really good. You can't complain, you get a bit of everything for the solo, and the timestamp for it is really, really good. The rest of the song, as I said, is quite typical, but again, it's a song with a great solo. The vocals, for the most part, are very, very good. You do get keys in there, which does give an extra bit of melody, but it's very, very lacking compared to what they can do. So technically it's not a bad track, but damn can they do better. Synergy, this, next track. This starts more in the realm and vein of what I expect from this band. It's got this nice kind of twinkle effect to it. It sounds bad for metal, it's like, oh, it's twinkly, while we listen to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. No, it's just got this nice grace to it with the keys because everything sounds so light and like fairy tale. It's just nice, it's different. I don't want to just hear heavy chunking riffs constantly. How boring is that to just get that all the time? I want something different, and that's why I like Paralydium, because they have this sense of wonder and melody. It doesn't take too long until the guitars kind of come in doing the typical, we're just a guitar chugging a chord because I can't do much else, which is ridiculous because in the EP I did a damn sight more. But I've learned from this to not be as good, and that's too good, I need to step back because that's improvement. I don't know what his thought process is there, but it seems to be it. So that little bit at the start of just that, you know, fantasy, that wonder and beauty is nice. And then just before the verse comes in, you still get a little bit of that. The keys really do bring a bit more life into the song. As for the verse, the vocalist really comes into it now. His voice is clean, it's clear, and it's open. His voice is amazing. It's the biggest highlight on this track. Well, at least one of them. His voice is damn near perfect. It's bright, it's clear, it's articulate, it just sounds fantastic. It's not a bad voice, it's not a voice you've really heard before, it's its own thing, and it's so beautiful, his voice. The solo is the next thing that really surprises me, because the first part of the solo is actually acoustic. Now, I've not really heard many metal bands where they actually approach a solo acoustically. I've only really heard it from memory in Avenged Sevenfold City of Evil album, the track Sidewinder. And I've not really heard anything like that since. It's always electric guitar. So it's nice to get an acoustic lead. It is really different and nice to just hear something on a different instrument just showing what it's capable of and what the guitarist can do with a different instrument. It's nice just to get a variety of different solos. Obviously from there it goes into guitar, if not keys, and then you just get that typical thing where it's just super long and it's just back and forth between guitar, key, and it goes on for again something like a minute or so. It's so long, these solos, and it has melody, it's got a bit of groove to it. You got the really nice and unique acoustic solo. It's really special, the solo, and again, the start of the track had that realms of beauty to it, and they do persist through the song, but it is still fairly stale and generic compared to you know, the kind of progressive metal bands where it's like they don't really try and be progressive. It is basically just the bog standard kind of heavy metal. That's kind of what it is. You just got basically some nice melodies that do come through and flourish every now and then. Fantastic vocals and an absolute genius guitar solo. So even with the generic things, there is so many good aspects of the song still. Finding the Paragon, the first single, this is the heaviest track on the album. And again, it's just doing a heavy riff for the sake of heavy riff because that's what people are into. It's so boring and stale. I want leads, I want melodies, I want to see something musical and technical and thought-provoking and heartfelt. I want to see something like that. But you don't, and again the vocalist goes to something a little bit more dry, which is annoying because when his voice is clean and clear, it's so nice. His voice just seems a lot more limited and just like restrained when he sings like this, and I don't really like it. It's still not bad, like his voice is still good, it's just it's nowhere near what he's capable of. It's so constrained and locked down. Going into the verse though in the chorus, the melody does come back and then the vocalist obviously gets clean again and opens up. And the backing vocals are very light and angelic, and they sound really nice. They're very short and to the point, which is annoying. I would kind of like them to be a lot more in the up front and a lot more throughout the album. They're only basically present here, which I think is a darn shame, because it really kind of adds to it, this whole new dimension and grace, and I really like that. Another thing about Finding the Paragon, they do a shift on the solo aspect. There's something like 5 solos the band boasted, and technically there is, but because there's 5, they are very short. So I think the first one you get is keys, and then you go to bass, and you get drum, then you get guitar and keys, and then at the end of the track you get guitars and keys again. So there's a lot of solos going on throughout the track, but not a lot of time signatures for each individual piece, especially for the bass and the drum. The drum, you could just say it's just filler. It's not exactly a solo, and same with the bass, technically. As for the keys and the guitar, obviously still kind of take the show when it comes to the solos in this song. Still not a lot of time, but you do get a lot of solos when you stick it all together. It's still a huge, lengthy solo. Crystal of Infinity is now coming more into the realm of what Paralydium are, which is the focal point on melody and groove. So Crystal of Infinity starts melodic and then it goes into, again, just typical riffs. It's so annoying that he never really does leads. Or maybe there is a lead. I think in like an odd 1 or 2 tracks he does do lead. I can't remember if it's this one or somewhere else. Then when it gets to the verse, it's quite empty. Like, the vocalist is basically the only one there with just like keys or something. So it does kind of seem quite void and empty of space where there could be some really beautiful melody. So it's just basically the voice carrying it, and it's like, it's nice and it's really laid back, and I can just enjoy the grace of this lead vocalist who, as I said, has a fantastic voice. When the band eventually do come into it, the vocalist then kind of uses that to be able to launch his voice into a bit more of a powerful state. So it improves a lot more, he sounds great. The guitars are just doing the gent chords, just dun 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 dun. It's just, why are you doing that? It's this slow, very open track, and it's just so quick and just dry, just picking out a chord, and then the note just dies. It doesn't hold, it doesn't go on, it doesn't transcend, it's just not there. And it's such a pain in the neck. And then going into the chorus again, it's got some of a melody to it. The solo of this one is the most random of solos, because in every track the solos are just insanely long and jump between the two, but the solo in this, the guitar is just, here I go, that's it. And it's rather odd seeing that all the solos, it's like we have to be keys and guitar and do a lot of length, but when it comes to this, it's like, no, I'm under time constraint. It's really odd, and it sticks out, and it's very weird. It sticks out for me anyway. Like, a lot of people just won't be using their brain when they listen to this, but if you kind of take notice of solos that come before and after, and then think like this solo in the mix of all that, it seems rather weird why this is the way it is. So moving on to the next track, Awakening. So this is the second interlude track. It's nothing, there's no band, it doesn't play into the next track, it is a pointless track. There's 2 tracks on this which are completely pointless, so delete them, there is no use for it, it's a waste of your time. And it's stupid that they put them in to pad out an already short album. So the next actual track is The Source. So The Source is definitely one of the better tracks because it is more so Paralydium. They still are lacking the identity that they made with the EP, but it's definitely way more here than anywhere else. There's a lot of melody to this with the keys and the bass by itself, and then the guitar just taking a sit back just so all this softness of the melody can really take focus, and then the guitar can come in just in these small little parts and pieces, not taking out all the forefront parts, and the vocalist has groove to his voice. That's another thing with The Source, this is definitely one of the more groovy kind of songs. There's a groove to it, there's an interesting melody to it. The solo again, you got keys and guitar, and I think near the end you get another low, so there's like 2 solos. And then into Divinity, again this starts soft and then builds up, and then it's got even more of a groove to it in this track with the bass and the vocalist. It's got this real interesting groove and pop to it. And then the solo, again there's something like 2, so you get the one in the bridge section, you get the one at the end of the track. Another interesting part about Into Divinity is that first pre-chorus is very interesting because the vocalist sings incredibly high. It's not high as in a high scream, it's a soft high, and it's really just out there, like you don't expect it, and it's really odd. Oh, also in the track Crystal of Infinity or something, right at the end he screams, which seems rather odd because it's just like there's no screams anywhere else, and just right at the end he screams when there's not really any indication or musical kind of introduction for something like that to happen. So it's just like, well, that happened, but why? It just really comes across as ridiculous and silly. So I don't like that. But Into Divinity, that high is like, wow. Because it shows range. Like, a guy to do something that high is very hard because our men's voices are usually deeper. We have the Adam's apple, so to get our voice into something high and really graceful like that, like, seriously listen to it because it's very good. and it sounds like he does it with ease. It is very difficult to get a man's voice in that section. It can be done, of course. It's just not really the average normal place for us, unless all men would be walking around with a voice like that. It would be ridiculous. So that's cool. And then the chorus again, his voice is just so on show, just with the music, and then he just does his lines, and he keeps extending it and putting more emphasis and power into his voice as the chorus just restrains, and then he pushes, and then it comes back, and then he pushes again. It's just got such a good kind of melody to it, where his voice can just just constantly keep projecting itself. It's so nice. Probably his best vocal performance, because that really light high notes that he hits, and the chorus just where he can belt out. The solo can sometimes go into the chorus as well, at the end of the track at least, which gives it that little bit more of a push. So Into Divinity is really nice. It's got groove, it's got the best vocals performance on it. It's still got the two solos, which is technically more because it's key guitar, then through the chorus there's a bit of a lead, then it goes to key guitar. So again, loads of solos. Seeker of Light is starting off melodic with just basically keys and vocals, and then you start getting the rest of the band coming in a bit later. It's not got a nice groove to it like the previous two tracks. It's just a lot more kind of just soft and musical, instead of having that kind of good energy and groove to it. It's just a bit softer than them two. And then again, solos, which are great, and it's just a soft, nice, easy way out of the album. And that is it. So I'm giving a lot of praise to the vocal work, as well as how great the solos are in getting plenty of them, as well as tracks having great melody to them, and having great key parts and flourishes. Some of the longer tracks, the first verse can be different from the second verse, but then there are also a handful of tracks, which is basically you've got your bog standard intro, the verse, chorus, a bridge, and that's it. So you got a lot of tracks, which is the standard song, where it's like there's nothing interesting or really spectacular about the structural writing of these songs. Then you've got others where it's like, oh well, this has kind of changed. So this verse was just bass and keys, and now it's got more guitar, or it had the guitar, then it's gone a bit softer, so you get a different variety of verses, which is quite nice. And as I said, the solos are fantastic, apart from Curse of Infinity, which I don't know what the hell happened. And yes, there's a lot of good there, but then there's the bad, which is the fact that it's only 7 songs, and they've had like 4 odd years doing this. And they've come out with their first ever album, and it's, if you just take the songs as they are, 40 minutes. That is ridiculous for what is supposed to be progressive metal. Like, before the EP, you would have thought that this album would be over an hour easily. Especially since the EP for 3 tracks, you're looking at something like, well, 23 minutes as I said, so 2 8 minutes, 1 7 minute odd. And then in this you got 4 minutes up to 7 minute songs. I'm glad the 7 minutes are there, but 4 minutes? Really? It's very odd compared to when you know what the band are capable of, with how much they can really put into the EP with just all them leads for the intros. Like, their leads go on for a bloody minute until the stinger came in. And then it had a multitude of verses and bridges, and it was vast and expansive with such grace and melody about it, with long solos. And then this is standard. As I said, there's a lot of the intros, the guitarist isn't doing leads. It's only 1 or 2 tracks where the intro actually has a guitar lead, and it's rather odd that that's the way it is. The intro tracks is supposed to play into the first track, but for some reason there's a weird pause, and I don't know why. I swear it's a mistake. It must be, because why else would it play into it and then have a pause? They must have not put it back to back properly. It's really weird. If it was back to back, I would include it, but because of the gap, you may as well just delete it. So you've got 7 tracks. 4 years, people have been waiting and anticipating this album, and they've had 4 years to work on this, and all you get is 7 tracks of 40 minutes. It just seems pathetic to me. It's ridiculous. And then they release 3 tracks, which only leaves you with 4 tracks to hear. You go out and you buy the new album, an album which is priced as an album. So you're paying technically to hear 4 tracks, because you've already heard the others, so you want to pay so you can hear all these new tracks. It's like 4 tracks for in the UK, £15. It doesn't seem worth it for that price. Now, if you haven't really heard them tracks, then yeah, you're getting 7 whole new tracks technically. And then the price point kind of works more in your favour. So it still doesn't excuse the fact that it's 40 minutes. There's 2 useless tracks, and you only get 7. And they've had years to work on this. They didn't even shove their bloody EP in here. They could have just put the 3 tracks of the EP into this. Although them tracks would have been a lot more expansive than this, which would seem a little odd to an extent. So, putting the score on this album, I've given you a lot of bad, as I've said, like things that aren't excusable. This is slightly pathetic to call an album, seeing that you only really get 4 new songs if you've heard the singles and everything. It's got 2 useless tracks, you only have 7 tracks, it's 40 minutes. So the album always seems short. The riffs are very, very standard, as structures are very, very standard. But then again, you've got other songs where it has great melody, the vocal work is fantastic, the solos are unbelievable. And then certain tracks, it is unique and it has absolutely beautiful melody to it, and it's so different and it's amazing. So, is it bad? No. This is still a great album. Just take the tracks which are bog standard, like Within the Sphere or Finding the Paragon or something, where the structure is very standard. You still got a great vocalist. The music that's there, the choruses are still catchy, the music is still catchy, it's easy to get into. The solos are still incredibly expansive and have great musicianship to it. So even the bog standard tracks, they're still good, they're not bad. And then the tracks which do go that bit further, go that much further above the typical song. Because there's more to it, so you've got the more melody to it, something a bit more unique to it. So it's definitely going to be better than good, so it is technically a great album. Now it's not going to be an 8.5, and the EP was 9.5, so 8.3 is really dropping the ball for them. But it's still great, and it has really good aspects. But again, they really did fall a bit flat with this, just because how limited you are with this. There's very few tracks, and the writing getting a little bit more lazy. I don't know if it's the record label they're with, because Frontier Records, from what I've heard of people signed to them, they're old school glam 80s metal, hard rock stuff, and it's just so typical. There is nothing unique about it. I don't think I like anything off of that record label besides this. Therefore I don't know if they just said just make it the standard way. I don't know. I would tell the band to go to Inner Wounds Records, because that's where Dark Water is. And last year Dark Water Human was the greatest album of that year, and it's an incredible progressive metal album. And if Inner Wounds gave them the ability to go over an hour and make something really, really damn good, I'd say give up on Frontier's Records if they are the ones who did this. If Paralydium did this to themselves, then seriously get your head out your backsides and actually do something properly. Because you got the talent there, you just need to work on getting that songwriting back that you had on the EP. So for £15 UK, I do think that is quite high. I would probably say for what you're getting, as well as the fact that you've heard 3 songs already and you're only going to get 4, then I would say you're probably looking at £10, if not 11 to 12. 15 seems a bit high and a bit of a rip-off for what you're getting. American dollars, I don't know if that basically means that the album is $20 or something and you need to wait till it's $15 for it to be the right price. I don't really know the conversion between dollar and pound, but that's probably somewhere in the ballpark of what I'm getting at. So the album is definitely worth it. As I say, it's great. It's an 8.3. It's great. It's worth it. You will enjoy it. None of the tracks are something where it's like, oh, I'm just not going to listen to this track, I'm going to delete it, apart from the 2 useless tracks. But the actual tracks, there's nothing wrong with them. They are all still very good. But the album I reviewed prior to this, Mind Maze, I'd probably say that album is better than this. And if you want to get something out of this or the album I just reviewed, I would probably say you should probably go for Mind Maze. Paralydium have better aspects to them, but because they're so few and far between on this album, Mind Maze is just a fuller album. It's over an hour. The musicianship is full on. It's all over the place. The guitars are insane, the bass is insane, the vocalist is brilliant. It's over an hour. You get a bit of variety there. The songs are complex in structure. I would say go with that, but I'd still support this band and stick with them because I know what they're capable of. These guys are great musicians. This vocalist is great. They can do better than this. So 8.3, it's a great album, but a far shadow of what they were and used to be. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see when the next one comes out if they actually improve and what happens. But until then, this is it from me. See you later.